That's a good point.
Racism and prejudice will just always be a thing until the day comes where we don't even acknowledge race. We don't acknowledge.
As long as that's a topic.
Yeah, it's because, like you said earlier, eventually, someday, inevitably, we will
all be one race, baby.
Yeah.
It is calculated in 50,000 years.
No, for sure.
Nothing. Welcome everybody to the episode 34 of the Effin Pure Podcast. I'm your host Marcus with my co-host. Say your name.
Courtney.
And yours.
Sebastian.
What, dude? The mic. You always do this.
I said it loud though.
I know. So.
Because he always stutters saying my name.
And plus, I didn't know you were gonna do that.
I get nervous
Your
every
name
time.
And yours.
Wait a minute. Where's my? Oh, anyways, so we have a pretty interesting topic to talk about today because it was something that was briefly brought up in our last podcast about the cancel culture and that whole escapade. Did we bring it up last? Yeah, I think
you
we did.
brought up that we were going to talk about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like it isn't really. You said it is talked about a lot, but I don't feel like it is. As far
this
as
topic,
yeah,
I never said that.
Well, it's because it's like becoming normal. It's not really like a
Yeah.
thing to talk about.
That's
but it's
true.
interesting
But I'm
to discuss
interested.
it.
but
Yeah.
it's interesting to at least talk about it in different perspectives and get an idea of kind of how people look at this certain topic itself. So we have a guest here today. You might have saw a glimpse of her at the end of our Bitcoin podcast, but I do want to welcome her today. She's a managing partner of an advertising agency. You've probably seen her billboards somewhere downtown Columbus. She's also my dad's girlfriend, unfortunately. Toy Marshall to live vivo. Applause.
It's unfortunate for her.
What up?
Yeah, for her.
I'm
Because
just kidding.
my dad's in the background, so I'm just trying to poke
Give
fun
him
at him.
some shit.
He's mad he's not on this episode right now.
He's
so.
He's fucking pouting over there.
Well, I want it. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
For sure, man.
No, I've been actually wanting to get you on this as soon as
we
possible.
met you. Yeah.
Because obviously you're well spoken. My dad's fucking up equipment right now. And I think you have when you talk, I listen. You know what I mean? So I feel like this podcast, this episode in particular, is probably a good one to talk about because we actually, okay, so just kind of, enough with the theatrics. We want to talk about interracial relationships. So obviously two different races, dating, marrying, having a family together, whatever the case may be, and just kind of give our all of our perspectives because all of us collectively are in interracial relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can attest
funny.
to everything that we're talking about today, because we've all, and it seems normal today in this day and age, 2021, almost 2022. So it's easy. It's not really bad at, people don't look at it like that anymore. But Toy, a woman that is older than us and has seen how that's kind of transformed in, generations and how it's looked upon. So, and also you're dating my dad, of course.
Who is white?
Who's a white guy?
You've seen
He's
him. If
white.
you've seen the Bitcoin podcast, he's white. My dad's white. He's a Nina dad.
He doesn't
So-
look white though. Sometimes
What do you mean?
You're right.
he's got I don't know. He just doesn't look white like me. I
I think
fucking
we
white.
should do the ancestry DNA test on him.
Yeah, we should. We should.
Yeah.
I'd be interested because I want to know what else I am too.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. So, anyways, we have there's a lot of ways that we can attack this certain subject in the matter, just because we can talk about just race in general, but I really don't want to get into that because it is kind of touchy to some people. But as far as just, I think, interracial relationships in general, so to kind of start out, have you always dated someone of the opposite race for you, or was it something that just have you always? I don't know. I can't really pinpoint it because to me, you kind of are attracted to who you are attracted to. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's how you first about it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Sebastian said you like what you like, and
Yeah.
I think that's true. I have probably dated a larger percentage outside of my race, but I've
Right.
also dated within my race, and somewhere in between that, because there's obviously sort of biracial people in all sort of spectrums that exist. So there's always there's been that too, and I think I'm sort of when you asked me to do this podcast, I thought about how much of this was I like what I like, which was Sebastian and I's sort of thought process, and how much of it was also my environment growing up. And it's hard to quantify in a percentage why that is, but
no, that's because for me personally, I mean, my whole family is all interracial. I mean, even on my mom's side, you know, obviously my dad, you know, he has always dated women of the opposite race, and my mom as well.
What's the opposite race of white?
I don't know.
Is it
not
black?
White?
Is it black?
I mean, not just black. Yeah, I don't want to single you know, black people or, you know, Hispanic people or, you know, Asian people. It's more of just, you know, I don't know. I'm the same way though. I like what I like. You know, I'm not really. I would say I'm somewhat selective of kind of what I find to me is attractive, but everyone has their own taste. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, in their own way. But you did say, you know, kind of. You know, you like what you like, but then also you're also a product of your environment, you know, a product. So what do you mean by that? Like, what kind of environment did you grow up in?
I mean, it's a good question. I grew up, first, I was born in Detroit, in the Motor City. And, you know, that very early part of my childhood was much more cultural and very diverse.
Right.
It was the 70s. I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in 1970. And, you know, there were definitely, I would say at that time, up until probably fourth grade, I was really among a majority of African Americans.
Right.
But also, there was integration, you know, so the school, you know, getting into school and being at daycare, you know, one of my very best friends was Jewish. So I do remember there was a lot of culture in that city,
right?
Just because of the diversity there and going to cultural events there. So that shaped me in the early part of my growing up. And then I sort of adapted and had to go into some other school systems. I ended up moving to North Carolina for a couple of years. I went to this school that was sort of like a model school, but it was 100% Caucasian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went there, and then in middle school, I moved to Columbus. And in Ohio, we were going through in the 80s. My parents decided to live in a neighborhood that is close to Sharon Woods here in Columbus. And at that time, when I was going to middle school at that time, there was busing. And busing obviously was, you know, part of, you know, racial integration and making schools diverse and sort of forcing it. So even though I was living in a neighborhood that was sort of multicultural, but I would say 90% Caucasian, I was being bused about 30 minutes away to another school, but that was almost like sort of 80 to 90% African American. So that was a whole nother sort of level of adapting for me. And then high school, my parents decided to build a home. And at that time, they decided to move out of the Sharon Woods neighborhood, and they decided to move to Worthington. And at that time in Worthington, although our school was very, very large in population, very little diversity there at that time. And I graduated in 1988.
So you weren't like, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Go ahead.
this is.
I mean, I didn't. So basically, you've been around a lot of diversity throughout your childhood and growing up, you know. And because for some families, I think it's not really a big issue for people, but some families don't really like when, you know, their kids are in an interracial relationship, you know, rather be Caucasian, Black, or African American, you know, Korean, or whatever the case is. So, I mean, because it was the same for me and Sebastian, at least, because we went to the same high school, and it was very diverse, you know. And we were talking about this before this podcast, but there was a psychology class I took where there was I think it was Olentangy or Dublin. Those who live in Columbus kind of know those areas are more, you know, uppity. They took a freaking field trip to our school, and we were divided up in partners, and they just followed us around all day.
That was so weird.
And
oh man,
you know, just they were almost, it was like a culture shock to them, because they were there and they were like, you guys don't have cliques. You guys can just sit anywhere on the table with people and it not be weird. I'm like, yeah, like everybody's cool. Everybody's like talking in the hallways and shit, and like, hey, what's up, man? Blah blah. And everybody's just cool. But to them, it was like a culture shock. They had no idea that this existed.
Yeah.
But I went to a very diverse. It was all even percentage, to be honest with you. I mean, you could probably attest to that. There was a lot of Black African Americans. There was a lot of Somalians. There was a lot of Mexicans. There's a lot. Even white and other like me, because I'm another. That's what I circle on the application.
I'm other. I'm that last one.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, I think it's about being used to like your environment, you know, and I think me, I don't know, because let's go to Courtney. She hasn't really.
Well, I have a question,
much on
and
this.
I wonder how to frame this question. How was that like for you as a child? Like, did you know
it was weird,
the difference in like skin color? Like, were you taught that as a child, or did somebody ever frame it to you like in that way? You know what I mean? Because as a child, I don't remember thinking of skin color.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'm curious as to what that was like for you.
For sure. I mean, I had very strong parents who were preparing me for all sorts of scenarios. In these areas where I had to adapt. I mean, I was going in and out of, because of moving and, different cities and different schools, what I could be faced with. And it was very clear to me at a young age that I was a Black woman and that I was going to have to, there's going to be some things I'm going to have to figure out, right?
Yeah.
And that I was going to have to be prepared for.
Yeah.
So I came from really strong parents who were trying to
teach you and prepare
me and prepare me. And even when I take you back to the person that was my girlfriend that was Jewish, even just having a different religious faith, I had questioned her. We ballet danced together. And so there's pictures of us doing that in our little tutus. And I remember once going to her parties and birthday parties, and then when she would tell me that she wasn't going to be coming to school for a Jewish holiday, I assumed I wasn't going to be going to school either. And so, my parents had to explain, well, this is, a, American holiday. This is a, what is observed in the school system holidays and why that is, and why I don't understand why I'm not going to school, and what's, all of the things of the Jewish culture, they're not going to exchange these gifts. They're going to get these gifts over these certain amount of days, and this is when this starts. I mean, there was a whole long answer to all of that. So I think, and again, like I said, Detroit was very, very diverse at that time with lots of immigrants. It was a blue collar working culture. So I did get to experience that pretty young. But yeah, I would say that, just to answer your question, that
interesting for sure.
That, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
well,
sure.
it's cool that your parents were able to break that down to you.
Yeah.
Because I know, I don't.
Sure.
When you hear about that kind of stuff, like some parents are like, "Oh, that's a different religion. Like we're not even going to talk about that in this home." So it's nice that your parents had that knowledge to share with you and shared it in that way.
Yeah.
Have you dated somebody that was a different religion where that was a problem? Or have you, has any, I haven't personally. But.
It's interesting that we just, the segue to that, because there was a guy, Gary, and we didn't date very long. Gary. We did not date very long, but
Gary.
He was Jewish.
Our Gary.
He was Jewish. And I remember that he took me out on a date or two. It wasn't very many, but I remember driving with him on the way back to him dropping me off. And he was very clear that he was never going to introduce me to his family.
Wow.
Damn. And, there was sort of that moment where I was like, well, Gary, I mean, well, then what are we doing?
Right. Like you automatically know that it's temporary.
Right. Yeah. So he made me feel, and I mean, there have been others that I've dated that said, my mom, or I'm not going to be able to do this, or I'm not going to be able to do that.
Right.
And it was very apparent to me that there were some people that just were not going to have sort of the strength to be in an interracial relationship, because they were going to have to stand up to so many others, whether that's the judgment of friends and peers, parents, religious.
Yeah.
You know, and I did experience that young.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think as a whole, as all of us collectively together, I mean, every race, just how society is built, has their own culture. So I kind of want to ask you a question, Sebastian, because you have a girlfriend that I've known since high school, and she is Mexican.
She's a Mexican woman.
Yeah, and
all the way.
Her culture is so much different than obviously what you grew up used to.
Well, that's
what I mean.
Well, yeah. Well, that's
how was that like been for you guys, like as a whole?
Beneficial, absolutely. Right. I mean, that's one of the biggest perks of it. And what's the thing we're talking about again?
Just how
something racial
interracial.
Fuck, I'm sorry. That's one of the perks of an interracial relationship is that you get to experience. Not only are you increasing the diversity of the world, you're experiencing that culture and you're sharing yours as well, and that's beneficial to both of you and to our kid.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
she experiences both. She's grown up being a half and half, and for me, man, it's really cool, man. The food. The food, first of all, is fucking dope.
It's off the hook.
I bet.
Yeah,
I knew that's what you were getting at.
Me too.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it, but I was waiting for you.
The food. But just like her family, and then the way they celebrate certain holidays, and just the way they view, certain members of her family have experienced a lot.
Right.
Being in the U.S. and then being in Mexico, and then that whole ordeal. And they just cherish and they look at life way differently than a lot of people do in America because they don't take anything that they have here for granted. And it's just really cool to see that and understand their point of view. And, I mean, it's like I said, it's definitely been beneficial to my life, my perspective and my point of view on life as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's, just from being around her and her family.
That's why I always want to go to another country. I just want to travel and stay there for a while, as a vacation, but also to learn the culture and how they live. Because I think the U.S. in general, society is just, we take things for granted for the most part. And, I've watched videos, I've seen other cultures and how they live, and it's almost, like I said earlier, it's a culture shock. I think just being in that environment. So, I don't know. Like me personally, I mean, we don't have any, I think we have our own culture, but I don't think our culture is any different from what we've been used to growing up.
You and I are very similar in that.
Yeah.
But I want to say, I used to work with a lot of people in the Spanish culture, and I worked with them all the time. I was day in, day out. We worked together on projects and setting up events and stuff. And they were just some of the most positive people.
Yeah.
And they were so caring. And I don't know, I just really loved working with them because it's crazy what they come from. They would tell me about their life in Mexico. And the woman that I worked with, she said that she had been working in fields picking roses and stuff since she was 9.
Wow.
To help pay the bills and stuff. So it was crazy to learn that and realize that she had been working for a wage for her family at such a young age.
It's fucking crazy.
It is.
It's bad, dude. Motherfuckers have to put make payments on shoes over there.
That's insane.
It's fucking crazy.
Dude, I went with Crystal's dad with you to go roofing for a whole day, and I was like, how do y'all do this every fucking day?
Bro, they work hard just as hard as
I
they
was
play
like,
hard.
man, these motherfuckers work really hard. I mean, I'm not saying I'm lazy, but I think I kind of took it for granted.
Come on up here, Marcus.
I was like, this is 2 stories.
Labor.
It looks like 100 feet.
Fuck.
That's labor.
Dude, we used to carry stacks of fucking shingles up a 3-story building.
Yeah, I just thought, I don't know, it wasn't my cup of tea.
But
my fingers are stay pure.
They are definitely I'm not saying, I mean, everybody in every race has their shitheads, but for a majority of the people that I've met,
Well, you're definitely right on, they do look at the world differently.
Yeah.
And I would say it's more positive. It's
I
the
agree.
way that their minds
They're
are
the
framed
hardest workers, man.
Yeah, not only that, but it's just even I learned that even the way you learn language can change the way that your brain is wired and the way that you think and stuff. So
yeah,
that's true.
I mean, Kia, your daughter is going to be bilingual. That's awesome. I wish I could be.
Well, is she? Because
I mean, Crystal talk to her?
Well, Crystal's embarrassed of her Spanish.
Yeah, Crystal's a perfectionist, even though she can barely speak Spanish herself.
Yeah,
but
she told me that she was at a high school level. Of Spanish.
Well, Catalina understands both, but she can only speak one. She can only speak English. Gotcha. Unless she's singing a song that she knows that's in Spanish or something.
So, kind of going back to Toy, as far as I kind of want to do this. I want to ask you about kind of the relationship that you have with my dad.
Okay.
And how
Well,
I don't
actually,
know.
can I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you ask that, I'm sorry, Marcus.
Yeah, this gives you time to prepare.
Yeah, but I do like that
Great.
question too. But I just had
Great.
a little one because I know like it was only like a few years before you were even born that like I think the legalization of interracial couples were even allowed. You know, that was even I think that was around the time when that was like
I think there was like
accepted, right?
31
Yeah.
states. I want to say it's like 1967.
Okay.
Like 31.
Did you see a lot of interracial relationships as a kid?
That they
that's where I was gonna-
legalized interracial relationships.
Yeah.
No, marriages.
No, marriage.
Marriages.
They legalized
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
they used to not be legal until like the
Right.
late 60s.
That's
if I'm not
fucking
wrong.
shocking.
No, he's right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
anyways,
Right.
but what I was gonna ask is like when you first like I don't know had a relationship or dated a guy of the opposite race, how did your family react to it?
It's an interesting thing. By this point, I would have been in Worthington to be at the age to be dating, and it wasn't the first guy that liked me that it was an interracial relationship. But my dad's not living anymore, but he would tell people this story that a guy came to the door, he thought he was selling something, he rang the doorbell,
God.
and he asked for me. And I knew he was coming, but my parents didn't.
Right.
And, son, what are you selling?
Oh my God.
And he's like, is
Discrimination.
Toy here? Toy? How do you know my daughter?
Right.
And,
Oh man.
and it was a very big conversation. My mom, not so much, but my dad definitely
Absolutely.
had some issues. And we really butted heads over this issue. But I was living in Worthington. And what
Right.
I said to him was, as we talked about earlier, a part of my environment, I was living in a scenario that, there were probably 699 kids I graduated with. And out of just that class, maybe there were 10 of us that were black.
Oh wow.
So, and I was connected to my previous school before Worthington. So I had lots of friends from lots of different schools. And, by the time this dating thing happened and we were butting heads, I think what it finally came down to was, he wanted the best for my education and my future, right?
Yeah.
He was thinking about that.
He's not worried about your love
wasn't
life.
thinking about my love life, right? And at the time, but I had to challenge him on this is the scenario and this is the environment that I'm living in. So for you to expect me not to be attracted to somebody that isn't, I'm only supposed to, out of the 10 people that are in my
You want me to
graduating
pick?
class, 5 are women and 5 are men. And
Right.
I've got a choice or,
Of 5.
maybe, whatever the scenario is, right?
Yeah.
Whether you like what you like, right? And so I think that was sort of this place that we met at the challenge of our the father-daughter relationship, and I was really challenging him about race because I was raised to be not thinking about that, but he was now when it came to his daughter. Now he was right, and so so there was a big conversation about that.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna have that conversation with my daughter one day. You know what I mean? And so are you, buddy? So
Yeah, but I'm ready for it.
no, I'm just. Well, it's a long time from now. They're only
Right,
4.
right.
So
I would be interested in talking to your dad.
Yeah, I know.
You
He
know?
would have been he would be great to have on the podcast.
And coming from his era where
Oh,
that
absolutely.
was such a challenge, and then in today's times where it's not as big of a deal. I think people are more of accepting of it.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yes.
But back then, I do wonder. I'm curious of like his fears for you.
Well, his biggest fear was that, let me just try to explain it and break it down. His biggest fear, I think, was that someone that was white wasn't going to be able to see beyond what our society had maybe put in his sort of perceptions and his stereotypes of what a black woman was.
Right.
So
Ooh,
were
that's
they
good.
seeing me and he was very blunt and very honest about his reactions. So his biggest fear was that they would see me as this sort of sexual being.
Right, yeah.
And they weren't really gonna like me for me.
Right.
Right.
And I think that was it felt like, gosh, Dad, I mean, you know, where are you living? Like, you know, you're living way over here in this old, and that's not where we are. We're integrated. We're in schools that, and mostly at that time, I just want to point out that most of the interracial dating that was happening at my time were black men and white women. It wasn't really the other way around.
Right.
It wasn't as common.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that's what sort of threw him. I think he probably had seen that, but it wasn't as common for that to happen. And anyway,
it was funny you say that though, because every time, you know, someone asks my diversity or what I am, they're like, "Wait, your dad's white?" I was like, "Yeah, he's white. My dad is white." You know, it's not. It's still kind of looked
surprising.
At that way. Yeah, very surprising. So
and
he's a lot of white guys are intimidated by the darker women.
Really?
Not even just black women, but darker.
I think you got a point
true.
there.
Really, I'm interested in that. Why do you think that is?
Why do you feel that way? It's interesting. It is.
I don't know, but like I've spoke to women who are like tried having like white women who were like voluptuous, like fat asses, and were like, every white guy I've ever been with just didn't appreciate my ass as much as my black boyfriends.
That's true.
Really?
And they were
I've
just,
heard
I
that.
swear to God, that's
I know
like,
it's a generalization.
And I know that was it wasn't a good example because the girl I was talking about was white, but I think, but I think that's how most white guys are with black women too, are just intimidated and don't know how to talk to them.
No, and also I think it's also the culture of African, black women, African American women, just because they're more, not trying to be biased because my mom is, black but also part Asian, but she's like a very strong
minded
woman.
Yeah.
I mean, just mentally strong. And she doesn't take shit from no one. I'm saying that white women are, the other way. I'm not saying that's the case.
You're right though.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, let me finish the point to why that's the case, because a lot of African American women had to raise their kids as a single parent most of the time, and that the way that culture has been set up, so they are supposed to be stronger. They had to be strong for their kids.
I think they were raised to have that mentality, and I think that I hate to even say they, but we are,
no disrespect,
everybody
obviously
should hold a man or their partner to a high standard, and I think that as black women, like, they have been let down by everybody, so they have to hold them to a high standard, and they're not going to let shit fly, is how the perception that I even have.
And I'm not talking shit about African American men, that's not the case. I mean,
or
that's
women,
just I'm not trying to put a target on anybody, but at the same time, I feel like white men in general are more intimidated of those type of women, and that's where you see most of those type of women at. And not even just talking about black women, even Hispanic women, they're kind of the same way. You know what I mean? As a whole. Now, this isn't try to divide. This podcast isn't built to divide anybody.
No, there's a ton of stereotypes out there.
It's kind of the stereotype and why that's the case. And what I've seen, because my mom is like, my mom grew, I know how she is, she didn't take shit from nobody. And my stepdad as well, who's this big fucking dude, she was never intimidated by him. Not once, you know what I mean? So, you just see, I think to some men, and I would say that's in general, I think some men are just intimidated by that, of a woman that is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, because even like, I don't know, I've just heard a lot of different opinions, and even like black
we're not
men,
saying this is not everybody.
No.
They'll even say that about their, black women, and it's sad because even like within that culture, there's a divide.
That's true.
But I wanted to go back to what your dad's fear was for you. I didn't know this until recently, and this is why I love like educating myself. But in the times of slavery, women, African American women, were looked at as these sexual beings.
They were,
and the men were looked at as beasts, like rapists.
Workers.
And power.
Yeah. And they were sexualized. Like the white people sexualized. The women would sexualize the men, and the men would sexualize the black women, and they would take advantage of the slaves and stuff. So I understand, like, his mindset on that, like, he's on point, and his fears for you.
Sure.
And it's crazy to think, it just boggles my mind in general that that's how this shit was looked at.
I mean, at the end of the day, that what you just said is how I exist. If you think about it, an African American person is a very large percentage of African, ancestry, but then European descent, which is me, right? And why did that occur? is, a lot of different answers to that.
Yeah.
But in how it occurred, whether it was rape or some
Right.
other relationship,
Yeah.
right? And, I've gone back and done a lot of that history in my family. And, one man and 5 children of the same man. Mm-hmm. So whatever you want to call it, right, is the start of one family and an African-American lineage.
Yeah.
And so, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
That's where he's coming from.
Yeah. And I can imagine that being very scary,
Oh,
I don't know. It's just such a different time back then. I can only imagine the mind state or the state of mind that people had, and the fear of even trying to integrate society and color together, like how do you approach that? It's scary times.
But it
for
was
them.
interesting because at that
For all of
time,
us.
when that was happening and that person came to the door, I mean, I also had friends that were dealing with it on the flip side of that in the same neighborhood.
Right.
And so we were all kind of going through
At the same
that
time.
at the same time
Yeah.
because of the integration that was happening in the schools. So it was very much everyone was kind of talking about who they liked and
Right.
who they had a crush on, and it was coming out, and
Right.
people were it was happening,
Right.
no matter what our parents said.
Well,
Right.
I got a question too throughout. Maybe this might be more directed toward like just me and you, just because we are technically society looks at us as minorities, but it could be for you guys too. But like, do you have like a single, I would say, instance or story where you were a victim of discrimination or judgment from another culture or race?
For sure.
For being in being in a relationship with someone.
For being in a relationship.
Now, I mean, yeah, I could probably, because I will say, even with me and Courtney, there was a time where Courtney caught this. I didn't see it, but when we went to lunch to it was like Sunny Street
Cafe.
Sunny Street,
Yes.
yeah, Sunny Street
We used to
Cafe.
go there for breakfast all the time.
Yeah, like in our lunch break at work,
Yeah.
because we only worked like 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away. But anyways, we went in there to eat, and Courtney noticed that there was this older white man staring at us, like in a just giving you that look, and it wasn't a comfortable. It was an uncomfortable.
It was a
look.
mean look. Yeah,
mean mug
it
type
was,
look.
and I made eye contact right back at him, and I was
Yeah.
like, I told Marcus, I was like, this makes me just want to like
But for me,
do some PDA right now because
well, it's funny.
this shit pisses me off.
You know what's funny though is that
What?
she got really mad about it.
I did.
but I didn't.
Okay.
Because it's something that I've kind of been through before in some
Yeah.
form or fashion. So to me, I can't change people's perspectives,
Right.
or let them. I understand why you got mad, and at first I would be mad, but I think I've just seen it. I've been a victim of it before.
Well, I
where
think
I just-
my job
I don't get mad.
as an advocate is to combat that shit. Like
Sure.
I'm not gonna let you get away with it. You're gonna
Right.
stare at me, I'm gonna stare at you. And I've even had experiences with taking Camden to the store with me. My nephew, he's biracial.
Yeah, he's
and
like same
people
color
would
as me.
stare me down having him. Like I go into that store all the time and never had an issue. When I take him in there, people are staring at me like, and it just makes me wonder like what.
What are they thinking, or like why?
Well, I can tell by the way that they're looking at me that it's not anything nice.
Well, what demographic of people do you typically see like staring at you?
Honestly, it was other black people.
Really?
Really?
Well, I was on the south side of Columbus, and that's the majority there. And I was
Yeah.
like I'm mad now. Like I can't even take my nephew to the store because it never stopped me. But at the same time, like I hated getting those looks. I was like, what the hell, Like leave us alone. We're just trying to get our groceries and go.
Well, we didn't touch on this, but I mean, I think in all the different schools that I went to, it's sort of, I can't say that it's equal, but I went to almost an all black school.
Right.
And, coming there from North Carolina at the time, I sounded the way that I do now.
Yeah.
I also sounded probably with a little Southern twang. I know my sister did. And when I got to the school, part of the sort of like adapting there was really tough in 6th grade because I wasn't black enough. So I understand, like, it's on both ends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, the dating piece, but also just being black, but then really not being accepted in a black school
Right.
was
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
happening. Why do you, and it was asked to me, why don't you why do you sound like this? And why don't you talk black? And when I would go home to my parents and ask them these questions and cry about it and be sort of like, now I don't misunderstood.
Yeah.
It was, well, I think you're going to have to combat this conversation differently, the bullying of sort of what you're being asked. And some of that bullying was, well, there is no such thing. It's just you tell them that you're speaking English.
Right.
But you know, that's not an easy thing to say in sixth grade, right? Like, absolutely. I'm speaking English. There is no such thing as talking black, or or there's this cultural thing, right? So that's a whole nother just race piece to I mean, this whole thing.
And it comes from all sides. It does. Know?
Well, someone as someone who is mixed, I mean, even when I was in the military and I had a group of just all black friends. Yeah. All black friends, and these guys were from this, from the South, from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and they were cool ass people, and their culture was different. But I also clicked with them, But then also I had a group of white friends that were also Southern white guys too, and they would always fuck with me. My group of black friends would be like, "You gonna go hang out with your white friends tonight?" or vice versa. Yeah. But for me, I can get along with literally anybody, and it doesn't really matter who you are. But at that time, as someone who is, I am biracial. How the fuck? Like, it feels weird not being in you're kind of off to the side in a sense of cultures and cliques and other groups.
I can imagine it's like, where do you truly fit in? Yeah,
and I don't want to feel like I'm just hanging out with a certain people because of their culture or who they are. I just tend to get along with everyone. I have many different interests. So, if predominantly in African American culture, the likes are a little bit different from your Caucasian white culture.
But about like hobbies
or hobbies, and I like both. Like I enjoy both. A lot of my white friends didn't like sports, but I love to play basketball with them, and But then my other friends like to fuck around and do stupid pranks, and those are all my white friends that did that.
That is proof, bro. That is fucking proof that is a huge perk to being multiracial and experiencing both cultures.
It is.
It's because you're comfortable with both and you experience both. But white people not so much get to experience African American culture and vice versa. Yeah. But since you did both, in some way, shape, or form, you were comfortable with both, and that's good. Comfortability to something that's different is good. It's a necessity in progress.
No, that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, I felt like they would always give me shit though. That was at the end of the day, they would. I even made a video a long time ago, just me hanging out with my group of white friends, and they were playing the guitar, fucking singing some country music, and I'm like sitting back like, with a huge dip in my mouth, like, this is awesome. And then my other segment of the videos, one of my black friends, I think Gerardo, he was like dancing to like Big Sean or something with a Henny bottle, and he was just like, it was just funny too because it was just so opposite. But I enjoy both. I mean. It's fun for me.
Bass fishing on Fridays.
Right.
Going out
to the club.
Listening to R. Kelly on Saturdays.
No, he was canceled if you listen to our last episode.
Right, yeah.
So, but, no, for me, someone who is, biracial, it's always been, as a kid at least, it was struggling, kind of figuring out, like, where do I really fit in? And, I'm older now, so it's different. I kind of know I like the way I am. I like that I can get along with anybody, and I can fit in with any culture or group. But
now it's not so much about like friends anymore.
No, it's more about priorities. And,
family
my own life and family, and the closest friends that stay in my circle still. So, I mean, because that's a perfect. It just lit a light bulb in my head. Like, wow, I get it. I know what you mean. Like, I can relate to that 100%.
Yeah.
But I mean, like,
it is a good thing though.
But like in the past, like, I don't know, let's say like 20 years, like, have you seen at least progress on that regard? Like,
on the relationship side?
Yeah.
And like the reaction that you receive?
On the relationship aspect of it, I think I have seen a lot. And I think to Courtney's point, I've been on the end where you are being stared at, but I've also been stared at and thought that it was the most negative thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And when I finally asked why we were being stared at, and this would have been with my ex-husband, the group of women said, you guys are such a beautiful couple.
Aww.
So, you sometimes
your judgment is
your
wrong.
judgment
Yeah.
automatically goes to the negative because that's
Yeah.
what we're used to thinking.
Absolutely.
Is they're staring over at us. We're sitting at the bar, we're having a cocktail, and we're like, what's going on? Is there something,
Yeah.
And we finally kind of just looked at them and they said, oh my God, we were just admiring this. And
Yeah.
so there is that, but there also is a lot of the other judgment,
Right.
depending on where you are. We've also been in the South, like you mentioned, and had the opposite reaction, and there's sort of a defensiveness from, like you said, the other party, and that same thing happened to me. I didn't see it because I'm so used to it.
Right.
I'm used to being the one that walks in the room and I'm the only black person. So
Yeah.
I understand that. But then when your partner is seeing this sort of judgment or this look and they're upset about it, I get that too, but I would say, I want to go back to your original question and ask me it again. You asked me a question.
Remember.
I know if you can remember what
So
it
what
was.
size shoe do you wear? No, no. I think I asked, like, have you in the past like
Progress.
15, 20
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
even the past decade, just have you seen progress at least?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think I'm in the media, so I see a lot of progress in
Even
the
media,
commercials.
though.
The commercials
Yeah.
that are out. I see a lot
For
of
sure.
mixed race. All of the different brands are promoting mixed couples in there, and I think it's just an interesting thing. Like, oh wow, they're showing a white guy and a mixed child and a black woman, or
Well, I've seen
Asian
it like an Asian man with a black woman.
Yes, exactly.
In
You don't
media,
really see that.
they never did. It was
Yes.
always a black man and a white
Yeah.
woman in like
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
And in media
Yeah.
and commercials.
And
but
even-
now it's different. Even gay couples are on.
Yeah,
there.
I was about to say that.
Yes.
It's very
Sexual.
frequent. Or transgenders.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
I feel like every show I watch is always different interracial types of relationships. Not even just your race, but
Yeah.
also your preference.
Yeah.
You know?
So I do think things have progressed. I think I struggle with probably more of the race conversation that hasn't progressed, even though I think that there's pieces of it that have progressed. There's things that I don't feel or that we're still kind of stuck as a society on pieces. But I think from a relationship standpoint, I think the Gen Zs and the millennials and the fact that it's able to happen so frequently, and you guys aren't seeing it the same way that
Yeah.
I did as
Right.
a Gen Xer,
Or even having the same conversations like with
No.
your parents. I
Right.
never got any sort of conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Okay.
me neither.
I never dated much when I was younger. I did a lot of my dating as an adult, I would say. So I guess that conversation maybe wasn't necessary, but I mean, I've never had that conversation. Nobody in my family has ever approached me like, you're not dating inside your race, blah, 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 which I'm grateful for because, 30 years ago it was a different story.
Yeah, it can be hard, man. I mean, I've been a victim of it before. Of someone that didn't like. They didn't. There was the father of the girl I was interested in. He just saw me one time. Didn't even know me. I just looked like a suspicious motherfucker to him. So, and I've been a victim of that as well. I mean, at the time it hurt because I never went through that because predominantly through my life growing up. I would say this though, why I feel comfortable around so many different types of races and culture is that, and as a kid, I grew up in a predominantly white schooling, till 5th or 6th grade, and then I moved, and it was minorities for the most part. It wasn't just just white people. So it was a culture shock for me instantly because I was always used to being like that 5% of minority in my school, and then it was like everybody's like it's all different types of races.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a culture shock because the school was ran differently. I wasn't used to certain aspects of how that school was, and then I got used to it. But I feel like that's why I am so comfortable around different types of people in general, and I feel like I can relate and get along with those type of people.
It's funny because I share that too, where I grew up in predominantly mixed, mixed orientation, and I grew up on the west side and all around Columbus really, and then I moved to Chillicothe, and I went to a school there that was predominantly white, and that was my culture shock. That school was even the kids were different. Like there were
the attitudes.
Well, there were these cliques. I wasn't used to that. When I went to Westland, that was the mixed diversity where it's the Mexican, African American and Somalian, and then white. It's like a quarter of each.
Yep.
So it was very, very mixed. And I had friends of all different races and, religions and shit. And I never thought twice about it. You didn't think about that kind of shit. And then when I went to an all white school, it was like all the cheerleaders sat together and all the basketball people sat together and the nerds, and I was like, damn, like I've never, like, this is weird to me.
It's like you see
I
in the
didn't
movies.
like it. Yes, it really was.
I didn't know that existed. Because when I went to high school, I was like,
weird, bro.
it's gonna be like cliques and stuff. Like you fucking watch High School Musical and everybody's in different clips or different cliques, and that's when I go back to that psychology class I had, and I asked her all these questions. I was like, do you guys actually have cliques? She's like, oh yeah, 100%. Like,
wow.
It would feel like the fact that we could sit anywhere on the lunch table and no one would bat an eye. They'd be like, hey, what's up, man? Why are you sitting here? But like, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. But in other schools, like, you can't, like, it's like what you see in the movies.
Right.
Like, you can't sit at this table because that's not who you are. You're not a jock, or you're not a goth, or whatever you call these types of cliques.
It's very cliquey.
Yeah, and I think it's fucked up because it builds society to be divided already. It's already calibrating your mind to think that way.
I'll tell you, I didn't really understand popularity until I went to that school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know, like, you knew who was popular by the way they dressed and by the way of who people
it's like Mean Girls.
to. Literally, yeah, it was crazy. And then at these other schools that I went to, like, everybody was just cool with everybody.
Right. Yeah, that's how our school was. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Our high school reunion's tonight too.
Oh shit,
we didn't go. Sorry, Pete.
Clearly,
because I thought about it, I was like, do I really want to fucking go?
I mean, no offense to anybody we went to school with, but
no, total offense.
Total offense. We hate every single one of y'all. No, I'm just kidding.
That's why we planned the podcast for tonight.
No, I don't know. I got my own life, and I really don't want to. I'm just not cool with people from my school like that. You know what I mean? So I don't see the point in going to a high school reunion if I. Generally, when I was in school, me and Sebastian, we didn't really fuck with nobody in high school like that. Just wasn't even Joe, all three of us, the collective whole. I just think we're not into that superficial. Yeah. You have to show out in front of these people just because you feel popular.
How long have we been doing this?
No, I think this is
like 45 minutes.
Okay.
So I mean,
there was one more topic.
What?
I feel like we've hit everything in your notes. I liked your notes, and we've stuck to that.
Good. Okay.
The last thing that we haven't really touched on yet is what makes interracial relationships work and or fail.
In your perspective.
Yeah, and also I want to come back to your question about me dating your dad.
Oh yeah,
you didn't really ask that.
Oh, we'll save it for the end.
So I think that I have to say that you guys sort of touched on some of the answers, which is, part of it's having an open mind, and you're having an open mind into a culture in which you may know nothing about, but sort of understanding it and trying to embrace it and, find things that you love about it and you love that person. I think that's a big piece for making it work. I think also, honestly, you really have to be a strong person, I think, to be in an interracial relationship. Because it's not easy. It's not easy. Like you said, there's sort of these other judgments that you may be facing. You may be facing it from peers or family members or work associates, whatever it might be. Or, you want to be able to be strong enough to be honest, be able to, as you said, be an advocate in the room when someone says something about someone when your mate's not there. This is, listen, that was wrong. Or that was racist, or that wasn't, no matter what the scenario is wrong or right, but I'm dating somebody and like, I can't believe you just said that to me. You know, you need to be able to have the strength for that. And that's not easy. I think you also have to really have a clear identity about yourself, because being comfortable with who you are will make it easier for you to adapt and date someone else. But if you're not, and you'll come across that, the person that said, I'm not going to introduce you to my mom or my parents, obviously
that's a deal breaker.
It was a deal breaker for me.
For sure.
And I was like, well, we're not getting past you dropping me off.
Right.
I'm not really sure where you thought this was going, but now it's stuck in my head that my dad was right. Like, we're out because you think we're going to do something else, I guess.
A sexual, that's left for your interpretation.
Exactly. It was left for my interpretation, so it was like, we're cut off.
Well, yeah, and you can see the intent behind that.
Yes, and that happened many times, and I had to evaluate, okay, well, am I going this far with this person, cut them off. Like, how do I get out of this? Or what do I do if I like this person?
Yeah.
To try to have an open dialogue. And I think the other piece to this is being also open about having the conversation about race is probably half of the battle, because you've got to be able to have this conversation. It can't be something like, oh, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know how I feel about
life.
that. Yeah.
This is how life is, you know? I mean, I think race,
that's a good point.
Racism and prejudice will just always be a thing until the day comes where we don't even acknowledge race. We don't acknowledge.
As long as it's a topic.
Well, it's because, like you said earlier, eventually, someday, inevitably, we will all
be one race, baby.
Yeah.
It is calculated in 50,000 years.
No, for sure.
But
mean, the numbers are increasing. Like 1 out of every 10 people in the U.S. is like multiracial, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be this one melting pot one day. And that's what's going to, you're not allowed to be racist because everybody's the same fucking
And that's,
race.
I think that it's going to be more classist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that we
Yeah.
will always find a way to divide, which is sad.
We
but
already, race is just another notch on that.
Yeah.
With even, our economy. Just,
But go on.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I was going to say, really. But I wanted to kind of, because I wanted to get back to, obviously I was going to ask you the question with my dad because why are you with him? It's my fucking dad. I'm just kidding. No, that's not my
He's
question.
Mr. Bitcoin. Duh.
No, well, what my serious question though
Okay.
is, because obviously you guys, you are older. You've been through much more different types of relationships, and you've been in a sense through the ringer because relationships are not easy.
No.
So it's almost guaranteed you're going to have trouble in past relationships, obviously.
Sure.
But as far as being with my dad and you guys, how long you guys been together? Like, do you know how long?
7 months.
7
I think
months.
7
Wow.
months or so.
It's
Yeah.
gone fast.
Yeah.
That's what okay. Yeah. So based upon, just being with my dad for that long, considering your past relationship, what kind of things have you learned throughout your past relationships that you take with being with my dad and being in this type of relationship?
I mean, I think at this age, it really comes down to experience and age and probably less about the interracial piece, although I think the race piece of our histories makes this easier, honestly, because we have experienced enough in interracial dating that by the time we are now together, this is like the easy. Getting past that bridge of, I have biracial children, I've had an ex that was this and I had an ex. That part made it like, okay, we can skip past kind of some things versus maybe that being that first date where that person's never dated outside the race. Then it's like, oh my God, I'm starting at the freaking beginning, right?
Absolutely.
But I think bigger than that is out of past relationships is that you learn how to be so brutally honest
And upfront, right?
Upfront.
Yeah.
The first date was 5 hours, and we covered a lot of subjects. We covered a lot of history in that 5 hours, and I wasn't going into it thinking I was going to be talking about half of the things that we talked about, but they were easy conversations. And I think what I would say about your dad is that he is very inquisitive and he has a lot of questions. He listened a lot, and I think we both had this sort of rapport that we felt like we could open up for whatever reason. And I think a lot of everyone says, you need to have this first fight, and not that we haven't had disagreements or fights, because you definitely do.
Right.
In 7 or 8 months.
It's healthy to have
yes, for sure.
disagreements.
You have to.
Yeah. It's how it
But
works.
most of them are met with, a level of communication at this age that isn't about things that I would say are, when we look back at our old relationships, the drama of it all, we're not in that. We don't have really time for that. I think also things are sped up in your 50s. You date, and it's like, okay, look, it's like kind of funny questions like, what's your credit score? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
are you a heavy snorer?
Are you? Are you? You know what I mean? And do you like this? These are like real questions nobody
What are
in their
your
20s
investments?
wants to really ask, but you really need to
know.
understand,
Yeah.
like, financial, like, do you have the same dreams? Do you have the same goals? Because, like, look, we got another, like, 20, 25 years. Like, come on, like, we gotta, like, let's speed it up. So
Do I
there
like
is-
you or not?
Yeah. Do I like you or not? Are we going to kind of have like some similar interest, and are we on the same page? And I think you're kind of rushed to sort of hurry up and
figure that
kind
out
of figure
early.
that out
Yeah.
or move on, and that's okay. And
That's
you
good,
feel
though.
yeah, but I would say that's sort of what we've uncovered in this amount of time.
Well, I think a
5-hour date is kind of impressive.
What? Yeah, that
For a
means you
first
guys
one,
were clicking.
You know,
Obviously.
like I remember when I was like trying to date, and they were always super awkward.
Yeah.
Except for when
that's-
me and Marcus got together, that was more natural.
Yeah, but we knew each other, but
We
we
did.
never, were
Didn't
friends.
cross
like
that boundary, yeah.
we were never friends, and we never even looked at each other like that
But-
for the first 2 years that we knew each other.
I did, but
Well, she did.
I just couldn't imagine like
I was
you know,
married.
meeting somebody and then like you guys don't know each other other than like texting or maybe a phone call or two, and then you meet in person and click, and you find yourself in deep conversation for that long. That's kind of a special thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of early relationships are the downfall is a lot of just immaturity and ego, and you always want to be right in your relationship. It's hard to hear the other person out when you're fighting at times, and I think being older and much wiser, you kind of already know you just know how the drill goes. You just get it.
Well, I like
you
how
know what
she
you
said
want.
the drama.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
less of the drama.
Yeah, it's just
less of that, right?
yeah, and I think a lot of younger relationships are built on lust
Yeah.
in the beginning, and that's not always a good foundation in a relationship.
But I think this
Start
would be good for another podcast too.
It would be.
Mm-hmm.
Now I
What
didn't really.
exactly?
I would say the important things or what you look for in a relationship as a younger person, and then as you get older.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. I think you brought that up before, Toy.
Yeah,
I think
it's just,
nothing that's gonna be rude. Never mind.
What? Say it.
No,
dude,
He
that's
doesn't-
not effing pure.
He doesn't like
Effin
the
Pure.
relationship podcast.
no. I don't want to offend you and say something.
No, you're not going to offend me.
Well,
Nah.
I think
I
a
don't
piece
think
of
you
it
will.
is just the fact that it's your age. You've been on this planet a little longer, and you may not have as much time as younger couples who aren't thinking about long-term things. They're just
Yeah.
thinking about it in the moment. And then
That's true.
the older you get, the less time you have, because
Sure.
a lot of 50 isn't your halfway point anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the average lifespan is like 75 now, I think.
Sure.
So it's scary, and I know life fleets, and it feels like it's sped up. So when you meet someone, you're like, that increases the importance of like, hey, is this really are we doing this or not?
Right.
And so that's if we instead of living only an average lifespan of like 7,500 years, if we were to live to like be 1,000, then we wouldn't be even worried about that.
No.
Yeah.
And relationships would be come and gone all the time.
Exactly.
I feel like.
Yeah.
It would be not taking it serious.
Well, I just want to say that at this age, and obviously talking to the audience that you reach and talking to you guys, I mean, the relationships that I've had are, sort of like chapters in my lifetime. It's not,
You learn things.
and none of them are failures. I mean, they really are where I was and where that person was at that time.
Right.
And I needed to go through those for whatever reasons, and we
Right.
all do.
Absolutely.
And
I agree with you 100%.
and I also would say
believe
that, and I was married for 18 years before
That's a
meeting your
long-
dad.
that's a long time.
And that was an interracial relationship, and it didn't fail because of interracial or race.
Yeah.
So I want to make that clear too, that, that hadn't, I mean, that was like easy for us. We both were in situations where both of our families made that structure or foundation very, very easy, and still is to this day. So, I want to say that too, that, now having moved on from that and now meeting your dad, like, I'm in a new phase of my life in so many different ways. And
Yeah.
I look back and I just wish people didn't look at something not working out
As a failure.
Yeah.
Or a waste of
that.
time.
I love
You
that
know?
standpoint because I mean that's true. I've heard somebody talking about that before, and they're like, "You were successful if you had a marriage for 20 years."
For sure.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like that's a big deal. You made it work for that long.
No, it's good. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, every past relationship you've had or any struggles you've been through are not a waste ever. You learn and you move on, and that's kind of what I've taken, because I feel like if I met Courtney 4 years earlier, I don't think we would have lasted, or
Probably not,
gotten through
yeah.
the humps that we've already gotten through in our relationship.
It takes a lot of, I think, emotional maturity to even and like you said, being honest with what you really want. And I think that that's something that we've gotten better at, and that I didn't even know what I wanted 4 years ago,
Right.
5 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, as far as
Like a real
I mean, I was
long
fucking
lasting.
I was literally married. You know what I mean? Like I was married. I I mean, legally I was married, but mentally I wasn't. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I get it.
He wasn't cheating.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't cheating.
Okay.
I'm not a cheater. I don't think I don't have it in me to cheat on anybody. But I just think at the end of the day, though, I think whatever situations you go through, you know, I think I know that it's a learning experience. You have to move on. You have to look at it as a learning experience. You can't look at it as a negative.
Yeah.
You know, because
Right.
that's what it's going to do. I feel like it makes your mind narrow to what you hate. And you're gonna just look at the imperfections in people, and because everyone's not perfect, no one is perfect for somebody, in my opinion. I just feel like it's what you're willing to kind of. Where am I going here?
Yeah, I get it. It's
Yeah,
where you're
deal
willing
with
to
it,
sort of
maybe?
come together
Yeah.
on to make
Yeah,
things work.
I mean, there are people, kind of that fit the mold for each other for sure. But
I would say that there are people that are better for each other than
yeah.
others.
I mean, I don't think someone's perfect for you.
Right.
Like perfect. No one. I don't think those will exist because it'd be weird if you never fought or you never had a disagreement and it would also be boring. I mean, relationships where you're never fighting or you're never having disagreements are fucking boring. I mean, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you a robot? Or are we robots?
I learned something important one time when somebody said that if in a relationship they never fight, somebody's lying.
Yeah.
They're not telling the truth about how they feel.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're hiding something.
It shows a lack of caring, though. When you're passionate about something, you have a strong opinion on it. You tell it how it is, and I feel like when there is arguments, there are fights. That is a good sign that you care about each other.
Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
And I always see a fight as like a fight for the relationship.
right.
Sure.
Like not necessarily an argument of you're wrong, I'm right type thing, but it's like I want you to compromise with me on this because I have this much respect for myself to ask for what I want or to require what I want from you.
Yeah, you have to. You kind of have to drop your guard with whoever you're with.
Which is hard.
It is. It can be hard depending on what you've been through, and I feel like you have to be able to drop that guard and be vulnerable to your partner. Because if you're not gonna build a bond with each other, like a long lasting bond, in my opinion. So
Right.
I don't know. That's just how I see relationships now than I used to. Because I looked at more.
I didn't want to talk about it now. Damn it.
Well, I looked at it more.
I think
black
that
and
could
white.
be a whole nother.
Well, that's a whole nother thing, and I think it's about all I would say is since we're talking about generational and interracial relationships, is that you get to this place where you feel like you should be able to verbalize what you deserve and what you want.
Yeah.
And I think when you're younger, we're more hesitant to do that
Yeah.
out of other fears or
Definitely.
other things internally within us. And that's what I would say is when you get to that place that you say, look, I'm only going to put up with like this, or I'm not going to put up with this, and I deserve more than you are capable of giving me, or that then when you have that honest conversation, it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And even being with someone who is another race, being honest with each other with, disagreements or the way you were brought up and kind of the way, because people look at life differently, depending on how you grew up, or like, that comes with integrity, your values, your, what you see as respect and what some people don't view as respect. I think just being upfront with each other, like you said with you and my dad, and kind of laying it all out there, and it just makes it much of an easier, smooth sailing from there on, because now you guys are aware, and I think being like with me and Courtney, I think in the beginning we weren't like upfront completely of, what we didn't like, what we, because everyone has. I do believe in the honeymoon phase to a certain extent, but I mean it is a real thing though. I truly believe it is, because like if you really think about it,
you don't have any issues yet.
Yeah, well, because you think they're little things that don't annoy you at the time, but a year from now they're gonna fucking annoy you, or you're gonna get upset about it, or it's gonna be like, why the fuck do they do this every time? But at the end of the, I don't know. I feel like it's whatever you're willing to kind of accept. You have to accept people's imperfections, at the end of the day, and you have to really be okay with it.
Learn to love them for it.
Yeah, you
in
have
a weird
to.
way.
You have to. That's kind of keeping that positive mindset with somebody, and just looking at the brighter things of people, and I think that builds you guys. It kind of builds you guys closer,
Yeah.
And you always want to look in the future with your significant other, no matter who they are. You can't just always live in a moment with that person, because it's not. Like, what are you guys gonna do a year from now? You know, there's no you guys had to have some sort of path or road you're going to.
I'm curious about what's going through Sebastian's
Yeah, me
head.
too. I was thinking the same
like,
thing,
oh,
that he's been a
shit.
little bit quiet,
No,
but I
I'm
would
just-
like to
I'm
hear.
He's like-
I'm just listening.
I know, but it's like
He's
you're
like laughing.
he's
over
always
there.
laughing and shit.
I don't. Whenever we get on this relationship topic, man, and I don't mind talking about it, but I'm notoriously known for being bad at them.
I don't think you're bad at them, bro.
You
I really
think you're
don't.
bad
You
at
think
them.
you're bad at relationships. I don't think.
Because I am.
I don't think you're bad. I just feel like I don't know. I
Are
can't
you
tell
gonna
you what you're
accept
gonna
that
what you're
from
gonna feel
yourself?
like.
Huh?
You're gonna accept that from yourself?
I'm just gonna keep doing me, man. If it didn't work out, it doesn't work out.
All right.
I mean, you've been with Crystal
That's
for
all there
like
is to
10
it, man.
years. If you think about
Crystal's
it.
gonna
Yeah, I
accept
know.
you for whatever, so you might as well
Right.
just
Well,
give her your best shot.
I don't know. I don't.
Be honest. She
I'm
don't watch
telling
this
you,
anyways.
she's gonna stay with
She doesn't
you
watch anyway.
for that girl is not leaving you, Sebastian.
Oh, she's not.
So
well, Sebastian, have you had any struggles being in this interracial relationship with Crystal? I mean, you pointed out some of the positives and being open-minded to the culture, but like, is there anything that you can think of that's sort of a struggle as it relates to the interracial piece?
Only like maybe her parents and mine not being able to really. They've never even met. I don't think.
Really?
I don't. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think either of them are even
Jeez.
interested in meeting.
Holy shit.
Really?
Maybe my parents, I think, wanted to meet her dad at one point, but just never happened. I don't know.
Okay.
But so that's like slightly difficult, but in my
Right.
opinion, it doesn't really affect me as much.
Right.
To be honest with you, and I think Crystal's the same way. It's just my view on interracial relationships doesn't like. It's not even like a conversation we ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I think my curiosity and the way she lived was maybe something that was a segue into like a conversation we had about like her being Mexican and me being white. But just it really was never a thing that like I thought about. But
Well, honestly, that's kind of good though when you're not
Yeah.
acknowledging the other race like that as being an obstacle.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're with somebody, you know, you're not with them just because you like their culture. You know,
And
like you can be introduced to those things.
I think that
but-
shows that the times have changed.
Oh yeah.
When we thought about doing this topic, I forgot that you and I are interracial.
Right.
It literally
We are,
like clicked. I
technically.
was like, "We're oh shit, I forgot.
Yeah. I mean,
You're not
it's
my
funny
color."
too because people would as a someone who was younger, I would always get made fun of because I sound white all the
which
time.
is
Right.
I hate that.
And I hate
Yeah.
that.
Which is something
Because that was something
even
else I
Tori
wanted to
brought
bring up. Because you
Yeah.
said you were dogged on that for that.
sure.
This is
And
We're
why-
like you-
talking white.
Why
like you
you
said, like what does
Why?
that mean, you know? And what does
It
talking
is.
black mean?
it doesn't mean anything.
Like
in
that-
my
Well,
opinion.
I mean, if we're being
It
honest
could be
with
the
ourselves,
slang.
it kind of. I mean, when someone says that, you know exactly what they're talking about.
Right.
I mean, it's just a
Right.
But it-
majority of that
And that's part
race
of
just
like,
has like more slang and not as much as the white people do. You know, they. Just,
I know what you mean though.
and that's
Yeah.
almost like bringing. It's a complex way, and I don't know how, the correct way of saying it, but that almost makes you think that like you have to be educated to speak white, you know?
Yeah, that's what.
and
it's-
and that yeah,
Right.
like I hate to even say it that way.
Yeah, I know what you
I'm
mean.
I'm
though.
not saying it right.
No,
please,
I know
please
exactly
don't
what
hate
you
me
mean,
for
though.
it.
No, I just
But-
feel like the slang and the way people interact in certain cultures is just
Right.
different.
And
It's like-
even white people get talk shit on if they try to speak black.
What's up, my
But-
homie?
But it's like
Right.
when Dave Chappelle imitates white guys and does white face.
Yeah.
It's so fucking
it's
funny. He
fucking
talks like,
hilarious.
"Got someone on our case, Johnson." And he
Yeah.
It's so like that's funny.
Burgers will
It
crack
is
out and let's
funny.
get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So no, I know what you mean though.
yeah. I just hate that conversation,
I do
and
too.
it's
is,
shitty
too.
that it comes from.
I hate that it's
you
even
know?
brought up.
Yeah,
You know how many because I used to play a lot of video games online with other people, and I would always befriend them,
and they didn't.
and
know.
they're like, they would see a picture of me on social media, like, wait, you're not white? I was like, no.
Yeah.
I've had that happen. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
for
Like,
sure.
I didn't picture you as someone who's biracial. Like when I converse with people and they just, hear my voice. So
Right.
I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, it is what it is. I mean, like you said, it doesn't really bother me or you.
Yeah.
And I think what we talked about today was super insightful. It was very
Yeah,
interesting.
great
honestly.
I really liked a lot of what you said.
Me too.
Yeah.
To be honest with
Okay.
you.
well,
I'm
Tori's
glad.
always awesome. She's
Oh,
always
that's-
got
you
good.
guys are sweet.
Well, there were
good
times where
conversation.
you were talking, and I would sit there and I'm like, wow, that's really good. Your perception, and your perspective on things is really.
Yeah.
It's like a breath of fresh air. It really is.
No,
Wow.
it's awesome to hear those things because it makes me also feel like I'm not just alone in the experiences I've had before.
course.
We've
Right.
all, which I already know, but for those who might be listening, that's if you're going through the same type of ordeal, it's really everybody's going through it. I mean, literally everyone goes through their own shit. It's
I
not,
think it's educational too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I mean, this has been a really great experience, and I think it's a really important topic, and I hope that you guys continue to keep talking about race and in all sorts of ways and all sorts of topics. I think it's an important issue today.
Absolutely.
So
well,
I agree.
I again, I want to thank you for being on it, taking your time out of on our Saturday evening to share some wisdom to the Effin Pure audience, the 5 people that listen. So
we had 11 views today.
My dad, we've been doing it for so long. My dad is literally sleeping now.
I think he's sleeping. Yeah,
I
he's
heard
resting
you
his
snoring.
eyes, and you know
He's
your
like,
ancestors would
bores
say
me.
he's resting his eyes.
Ancestors.
And
I heard your nose resting too.
Well, he's probably thinking about Bitcoin over there.
Probably. He's like, how much money have I made in the last 20 minutes? So, do you guys have any last minute comments?
No.
Other than just
thoughts?
thanks for being on, Toy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
This was a good one.
We'll make
Thanks
sure
for
that
again.
we'll make sure you're on it before my dad is again.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, stay positive, test negative, folks. As always, thank you for watching, and go like and subscribe. Other than that, peace.